Hey, y'all. Come on in. Y'all go ahead and get something cold to drink. Roll one up if you got it. Because tonight we're going to settle back in the Florida room. We're going to relax. I need you to close your eyes. Because tonight we're going home to Alabama. Now, if y'all don't know, hey, I'm originally from Alabama. I do reside in Florida. But my home will always be Alabama. You see, I grew up about 50 miles south of Phenix City. Hey, and back then, wow, we all knew its reputation. You see, you didn't go to Phenix City unless you had a damn good reason, or unless you were looking for something completely unholy. At least that was the warning that was handed down to us. Now, by the time that I was growing up, the National Guard had already broken the back of the criminal machine that once controlled the city. But you see, reputations like that, they don't disappear overnight. Because the old stories, they remained. Stories about crooked gambling rooms, rigged elections, police officers protecting criminals, soldiers being robbed, and people who asked too many questions getting beaten, bombed, or dumped in the Chattahoochee River. Now, Phenix City, it sits right across the Chattahoochee River from Columbus, Georgia, and Fort Benning. Now, from the outside, y'all trust me, it looks just like another Alabama river town. But once darkness fell and the lights came on, people crossed that bridge looking for gambling, liquor, women, and every other temptation that money could buy. Y'all, for as long as I can remember, the criminals didn't merely operate inside Phenix City. Y'all, they ran Phenix City. You see, they controlled businesses. They influenced elections, corrupted law enforcement, and reached into the courts. The people sworn to uphold the law were sometimes the very people protecting those who broke it. Then, one Alabama lawyer stood up and promised to clean the whole damn place out. Y'all, his name was Albert Patterson. Now, he did win the Democratic nomination for Alabama Attorney General. And in 1954, that nomination practically guaranteed that he would take office. But before Albert Patterson could be sworn in, y'all, somebody met him outside his law office and shot him dead. Now, that killing, hey, it forced Alabama to confront what had been allowed to grow along the Chattahoochee. The governor sent in the National Guard. Local law enforcement was pushed aside, and truckloads of gambling equipment began coming out of hidden rooms. So gather around, y'all. Tonight, we're going back to the city once called the wickedest city in America. A place where vice became an industry, corruption became government, and the murder of one brave man finally brought the whole damn empire crashing down. This is the dark history of Phenix City, Alabama. Y'all, Phenix City will wrap you up in the strangeness, immerse you into the darkness, and chill your soul with a haunting mystery. Welcome to DJ's Southern Storytelling. Long before anybody ever called it Phenix City, there was a settlement named Girard, and it stood on the Alabama side of the Hooch. Now, across the water was Columbus, Georgia, where travelers, traders, and soldiers, hey, they passed through the area, making it a perfect location for legitimate business. But y'all, it was also perfect for everything happening outside of the law. Alcohol, gambling, and prostitution, well, it became part of the town's reputation during the 1800s. Travelers reportedly began calling Girard Sodom, comparing it to the sinful city from the Bible. Now, state officials occasionally came in and tried to restore order. But y'all, once the outsiders packed up and left, that gambling tables came back out, the liquor began pouring, and business continued as usual. Now, in 1923, Girard was consolidated with the neighboring community of Phenix City. The hope was that joining the towns might settle the rougher side of Girard, but it didn't. And the Depression, man, it really made matters worse. Phenix City had little industry or tax revenue of its own, and many residents crossed the river each day to work in the textile mills of Columbus. By the early 1930s, Phenix City was more than $1 million in debt and operating under a federal receiver. Y'all, plain and simple, the city needed money. But the gambling operations, they had money. And that is where the relationship between local government and illegal business became deeply rooted. You see, instead of shutting down the gambling houses and illegal liquor operations, officials collected licenses and fines from them. Everyone understood that the activity was against Alabama law. You see, the money, that helped fund the city. Now, at first, some residents convinced themselves it was a necessary compromise. The gambling operators provided jobs. They donated to charities, supported youth activities, and y'all, they even sometimes helped churches. Their businesses catered mostly to people coming across the river, so locals could look the other way and tell themselves that nobody in their community was being hurt. But once criminals began financing public services, they don't remain outside the government for long. You see, they begin buying protection. Then they begin influencing elections, and eventually they decide who gets to wear the badge, who sits behind the judge's bench, and whose vote gets counted. Now, by the 1940s, Phenix City's vice operators had reportedly penetrated nearly every important part of local government. Criminal interest influenced law enforcement, the courts, and the ballot box. The city did not merely tolerate organized vice. Organized vice helped run the city. Then World War II brought an almost endless supply of customers. Now, Fort Benning, now called Fort Moore, sat just across the Hooch. Tens of thousands of young servicemen, they passed through the base, many of them far away from home and carrying a fresh paycheck. The lights of Phenix City waited across the bridge. Bars, gambling rooms, and brothels welcomed the soldiers with open arms. But many games were designed so the customer could never win. Dice were loaded, cards were marked, roulette wheels could reportedly be controlled. Slot machines returned almost nothing. Alcohol left behind in bottles was poured into new containers and sold again. Some drinks were spiked so customers could be robbed after losing consciousness. A soldier who resisted might be beaten with a club, chain, or brass knuckles. Pawn shops were known to take practically everything a desperate soldier had, including pieces of his uniform. The criminals understood exactly who they were dealing with. A soldier, ashamed of being drunk, robbed, or caught inside a brothel might never, ever report what had happened. If he did report it, he could find himself dealing with police officers connected to the same people who robbed him. Now, Fort Benning commanders knew what was happening. You see, certain establishments were occasionally placed off limits to military personnel. According to the National Guard Association's historical count, Secretary of War Henry Stimson examined Army reports concerning soldiers who had been robbed, beaten, or even killed there. In 1940, he reportedly described Phenix City as the most wickedest city in all of America. General George Patton was stationed at Fort Benning during this period, and according to the same account, Patton became so damn enraged by what was happening to his soldiers that he threatened to take tanks, cross the bridge, and flatten Phenix City. Of course, that never happened, but it tells you how notorious Phenix City had become. Its reputation was even known in Montgomery. It was known in Washington. It was certainly known at Fort Benning. Yet the criminal machine kept operating because the people responsible for enforcing the law were either unable or unwilling to stop it. Now, I really need y'all to understand that not everybody in Phenix City accepted what their community had become. Behind closed doors, people talked about the corruption. They knew elections were being manipulated. They watched law-abiding residents live in fear while vice operators conducted business openly. Y'all, speaking privately, hey, that was one thing. But challenging the machine in public was something else entirely. In 1951, a group of residents created the Russell Betterment Association. Their goal was simple to describe but dangerous to pursue: restore honest government to Phenix City and Russell County. One of the group's leading members was Hugh Bentley, a local businessman and a Sunday school teacher. Now Bentley, oh no, he wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a gunfighter. He was an ordinary citizen who believed people should be able to vote without intimidation and live in a city that was governed by true law. And what did that do? That made him a threat. On the night of June 9th, 1952, dynamite was placed beneath the front porch of Bentley's home. Y'all, the explosion ripped through the house while Bentley and his family were inside. Miraculously, nobody was seriously injured, but the bombing had sent a clear and definitive message. You better stop trying to clean up Phenix City, Alabama. But y'all, even after the bombing, Bentley refused. Now, during the 1952 local elections, members of the Betterment Association attempted to watch the polling places. Bentley, several supporters, and a newspaper reporter from Columbus were beaten brutally. The reform candidate still appeared to have enough support to win, but the machine controlled the ballot boxes. Votes could be bought, changed, discarded, or created. The men counting the ballots could produce whatever result was needed. Y'all, the reformers realized that they could not defeat the machine through a local election because the machine controlled the election itself. Y'all, they needed help from outside Russell County. And that brought them to Albert Patterson. Now, Patterson was definitely not a stranger to hardship. He had served during World War I and was badly wounded in France. The injury left him walking with a cane for the rest of his life. And after returning home, he continued his education, worked in Alabama schools, and eventually became an attorney. He settled in Phenix City in 1933 and later served in the Alabama Senate. Patterson, he joined the Russell Betterment Association and became one of the most recognizable faces of the reform movement. And, as you would expect, the machine responded. His law office was set on fire. Friends urged him to leave town. He had a family. He had already served his country. Nobody could have blamed him for just walking away. But the attack only made him more determined, and the reformers developed a very bold plan. If they couldn't win control of the local courthouse, they would win control of the Alabama Attorney General's office. The Attorney General possessed statewide authority. That office could bring investigators, prosecutors, and the power of Alabama into Russell County. In 1954, Albert Patterson announced that he was running for Attorney General on a promise to clean up Phenix City. And that announcement right there, it changed everything. Patterson wasn't simply threatening a few gambling rooms. He was threatening the entire structure protecting them, the money, the offices, the elections, and the people benefiting from the arrangement. Y'all, the machine fought him all across Alabama. Patterson led the first Democratic primary, but did not receive enough votes to avoid a runoff against Lee Red Porter. At that time, winning the Democratic nomination in Alabama was essentially the same as winning the general election. Whoever won that runoff was almost certain to become the next AG. When early returns showed Patterson ahead, allegations emerged that his opponents were buying votes and attempting to change the totals. For days, the outcome shifted back and forth. Finally, on June the 10th, 1954, Alabama's Democratic Executive Committee declared Albert Patterson the winner. The people fighting Phenix City finally had their man. Patterson knew that he might never live long enough to even take office. He received repeated threats. On June 17th, he reportedly told a church group that his chances of surviving long enough to become Attorney General were less than 1 in 100. Following evening, his prediction became true. So on Friday, June 18th, 1954, Albert Patterson spent the evening working inside his office in the Coulter Building in downtown Phenix City. Now, around 9 o'clock, he left the building and walked towards his automobile. Patterson moved slowly because the war injury that had followed him home from France, he still carried the cane that he had used for decades. Somewhere near that car, there was an assailant waiting. 3 shots were fired. 1 bullet struck Patterson in the arm, another entered his chest, and the third one struck him through the mouth. Patterson stumbled away from the vehicle and collapsed near the sidewalk, and people rushed to help. But y'all, it was just too late. The man who had promised to clean up Phenix City died right there in the Phenix City streets. And as expected, his killer just disappeared into the night. The assassination, it stunned Alabama. This was no longer a collection of rumors about crooked dice or illegal whiskey. The Democratic nominee for state attorney general had been executed before he could ever take office. There was also an immediate problem. Who in the hell could even be trusted to investigate this? Remember, local police and county officials operated within the system Patterson had promised to expose. Any evidence collected locally could and probably would disappear. Witnesses could be threatened. A grand jury could be manipulated. Now, Governor Gordon Persons ordered state investigators and Alabama National Guard Commander Major General Walter J. Crack Hanna into Phenix City. At first, the Guard was there mainly to prevent violence and maintain order. But Hanna quickly realized that the corruption was way deeper than anybody in Montgomery wanted to admit. The city police could not be trusted to police the city. The sheriff's office could not be trusted to investigate the county, and even the local court system was compromised. Hanna established an intelligence operation. His men interviewed residents. They searched for hidden equipment and discovered gambling devices stored away until the heat died down. The general returned to Montgomery and requested enough authority to take control of local law enforcement. Governor Persons initially resisted, Placing an American city under military control was an extraordinary action, and it raised serious legal and political questions. But the pressure, it continued to build. On July the 22nd, 1954, Governor Persons declared limited martial rule in Russell County. The Alabama National Guard was ordered to take over the duties of the Phenix City Police Department and the Russell County Sheriff's Department. Guardsmen carrying rifles and fixed bayonets entered the courthouse. The sheriff and his deputies were removed from duty. The guard moved to City Hall, and they relieved the local police. Now, General Hanna told his men that the mission was as serious as combat and the moral equivalent of war. But he also gave them another order. You need to complete all of this without ever firing a shot. Then the raids began. Nightclubs, gambling rooms, warehouses, and brothels were searched around the clock. Locked doors were forced open. Secret rooms were discovered. Truckloads of slot machines, crooked gambling equipment, illegal alcohol, and other evidence were removed. Business after business was closed. The men who had controlled Phenix City for years, they tried bribery and intimidation. Hanna received death threats and was reportedly offered enormous amounts of money to just walk away. But he didn't. As residents realized the machine no longer controlled the police, witnesses, they began coming forward. People who had been silent for years started dropping names. The secrecy protecting Phenix City began collapsing. And in finishing up this wonderful story about Phenix City, Alabama, the state prosecutors and investigators replaced compromised local authorities. Judge Walter B. Jones was sent from Montgomery to oversee all of the court proceedings. A special grand jury began examining the evidence, and y'all, the results were freaking enormous. The Encyclopedia of Alabama reports that 734 indictments were returned against law enforcement officers, public officials, and business owners connected to all of the corruption. Y'all, the criminal machine that had taken decades to build, it was torn apart within months. 3 prominent men were indicted for Albert Patterson's murder. Russell County Chief Deputy Albert Fuller, Circuit Solicitor Arch Farrell, the position now known as District Attorney, and outgoing Alabama Attorney General Cy Garrett. Now, Fuller was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Farrell, he was tried and acquitted. Garrett was never brought to trial. He spent time in a mental hospital, and his term as Attorney General ended in January of '55. Therefore, while Fuller was convicted, the complete truth about who planned Patterson's assassination and precisely who fired every shot is still disputed. Albert Patterson never reached the Attorney General's office. His son John Patterson, stepped forward to continue the fight. John won the election and took office as Alabama Attorney General in January of '55. His prosecution of organized crime launched the political career that later carried him into the governor's office. By the end of '54, most of the guardsmen had left Phenix City. All the open gambling rooms were gone. All of the brothels were closed. And all those crooked political machine was broken. And in 1955, one of the sharpest turnarounds imaginable, Phenix City was named an All-America City. Hollywood quickly moved in to tell the story. The Phenix City story was released in '55, blending real events with heavily dramatized events. It helped preserve the city's reputation as an almost mythical capital of Southern corruption. But it should not be treated as a documentary, because the true history was already dramatic enough. Phenix City demonstrated how corruption grows, but it rarely takes control overnight. It begins with one compromise. The city needed money, so illegal gambling was tolerated. The operators provided jobs and donated to local causes, so people excused them. The money bought protection. The protection bought political influence, and the influence reached the police, the courthouse, and the ballot box. By the time honest residents recognized the full danger, the people breaking the law had gained influence over nearly everyone responsible for enforcing it. Albert Patterson believed it could take 10 years to clean up Phenix City. His murder caused it to happen roughly in 7 months. The men who killed him intended to silence the reform movement. Instead, those 3 gunshots woke up an entire state. My final thoughts. Been to Phenix City a bunch, been across the Hooch, across the bridge to Columbus. It's beautiful. Chattahoochee River is gorgeous. Like I said, growing up in Alabama, we all knew the reputation of Phenix City. Now, there still are parts of Phenix City that you don't want to go to. But it's not the same. Yes, it's violent, but it's not the same as back in the 50s. We will never, ever truly know how many people were actually dumped in the Chattahoochee River. And unfortunately, that river carries a lot of dark secrets, a lot of haunting mysteries. And that river is just pure strange. Peace out, y'all. DJ.